morning and welcome to the Closer's Inner Circle podcast. I'm Denise Griffitts alongside my co-host Ben Gay III, and our topic today is overcoming customer hesitation, why prospects stick with their suppliers. And in today's episode, we're driving into a crucial topic from the Closers Part 2, specifically page 173, titled, But We Always Buy from Joe. We've all heard this. We've all said it, but we always buy from Joe. So this discussion explores the common challenge that salespeople face when prospective customers are reluctant to change suppliers for whatever reason. And we're going to unpack the various reasons behind this hesitation, and we're going to focus on that keyword change. We're going to examine why customers often cling to existing supplier relationships even when they're not necessarily working or they're presented with potentially better alternatives. And we've got a number of factors that we're going to explore. We may do this in one or two episodes, but here's what we're going to be talking about. The power of inertia in business decisions, that's a big one. The role of trust and confidence in long-standing supplier relationships, don't forget about Joe. How personal connections and a sense of loyalty can influence buying decisions, and the perceived risk associated with changing suppliers, because change is worrisome for a lot of people. It should be, but if you can explain why changing could and should happen, then you've got it. So we're going to go ahead and try to overcome those concerns and discuss some strategies and do what we can to help you with your sales strategies. Ben, good morning. It's Wednesday, and it's always the highlight of my week to chat with you. And I know you have some submitted questions from our audience. So can you tell people about those? And then after that, this is a two-part thing. Can you tell people where they can purchase their own copies of the Closer's book so they can follow along with us?
Sure. Good morning. Pleasure to chat with you as always. We'll do the quick commercial first. The best way you can get the Closer series anywhere, any bookstore or whatever. If they don't have it, they'll order it for you. But the best way for you to get it is to go to a website I'm going to give you where they offer lower prices than anybody and lower prices than even I offer at my website, and free shipping, but they're still signed and dated because they bring them to our office to have me do that before they ship. So if you want anything in the Closers series, the official series, and or some of its cousins like Sales Closing Power, the book I did with J. Douglas Edwards, which is not technically a Closers thing, but it's part of the family, go to stores, STORES, ebay.com / run zone. I had a mental blank.
I do that all the time, but I knew that one.
Yeah. Run Zoni Books, RONZONEBOOKS, Ron Zoni Books. So it's stores.ebay.com / Ronzoni Books, RONZONEBOOKS. And if it's in by 2 o'clock Pacific time, it will be shipped that same day, and if not, the next business day. So we would love to have you be an official part of the Closers family, and that's how you do it. The plunging on, I took some notes during the week with people that I was just chatting with, and somehow this has become, people listen to the broadcast, a lot of them that used to work with me in some other capacity in some other company, and they're asking questions about things that went on then. And I'm thinking, it's been 30 years since we worked together. Why now? But whatever. One of the questions was, they remembered that we used to start our opportunity meetings in Holiday Magic Cosmetics and all of its affiliated companies. We had 5 major MLM companies that appeared to compete, but they really didn't. Different product, different names, just shared ownership. And the opportunity meetings worldwide, adjusted for time zones, and I think we were in 20 or 30 different countries with 5 or 6 different product lines, but the opportunity meetings started at 7:59 p.m. and not 8 o'clock, not 7:10 or whatever, 7:59 p.m. And the question was, why'd you do that? Here's one that's sort of funny and egotistical, Denise. I tried to remember why I did that and give him an intelligent answer. And the truth is, it dawned on me, the first meeting I was invited to started at 7:59. So it wasn't my idea. It was before I got there. But the reason because I asked the same question, the reason was starting a minute earlier than your official time is a lesson you can all learn in sales meetings, opportunity meetings, rallies, whatever. If you say it's like $9.95 as a price, $9.95 subconsciously to the person is $9 and something. So by cutting a nickel off, you take it out of the $10 category and the $1, the 1-digit category, and move it into $9.95 is $9. $10 is 10, 2 digits, different price bracket, different decision to make. So someone, probably William Penpatrick, the owner of the company, when they started out, or he got it from Neutral Bio, one of the companies he was with earlier, discovered if you said to people, the meeting starts at 7:59, 7 was what locked into their head. If you say 8, then they figure, well, we get there at 8:05, 8:10, 8:15. Well, you want everybody to hear the same message word for word. That doesn't work. 7:59, they back it up, and I remember clearly all over the world, even if I had to have a translator to see what they were doing, the room and 99% of the people who were going to come that night were in their seats before 8 o'clock. 7:55, 7:50, 7:59, what have you. It just moved it up. So if you're doing anything time-wise, keep that in mind. That's the answer to the gentleman's question, but it's also the reason we did it, even though I didn't realize that's the reason we did it in the beginning. And then, speaking of time,
I'm glad you mentioned that, because it's important to me, believe it or not, and you had no means of knowing this, but I just started a mentoring program where I'm teaching people, walking them through getting their voice heard on their own podcast in 6 weeks. It's intensive. It's a lot of work. But in 6 weeks, you'll be ready to hit the new year running with your own podcast from either side of the microphone. And I chose 8 p.m. And I've had people say, well, why 8 p.m.? Well, it's the end of the day. Things should be calmed down. Dishes are done. Kids should be, calmed down or asleep. I don't know. 8 just seemed a good idea. I'm changing that now to 7:59, because I'll tell you what, I don't have time for people to show up when they want to straggle in. I will I won't keep them. If you show up twice in a row, I boot you. I have to. I can't have you slowing everybody else down.
Yeah, that's slowing everything down to the dumbest person. It's like in school, if there was somebody, now, unfortunately, I don't know how I feel about it. The room slows down to the dullest student. Or if they're really dull, I guess they get on the short bus and go to a special room.
Yeah.
But we can't go any faster than Tommy, and Tommy, unfortunately, is dim-witted, where somebody else is, maybe they got an older brother or sister or something. They're 2 years ahead of what's being taught in the room they're in. So, but as far as the time thing, it shifts the thinking, gets it from the 8 o'clock plus mode to the 7 o'clock mode, and some think they're late at 7:10 when they're not late until 8 o'clock. And that another thing, you said you throw them out after 2 times. In all the holiday magic and related companies, 7:59, the door shut, and I mean shut, locked.
Right, right.
So you didn't get to be late and disturb other people. You got to be out in the hall by yourself. And word got around and people showed up on time. In the time category, somebody was in a meeting that I did, I'm guessing a couple of years ago. I don't really recall, but he happened to overhear the conversation, and he said, I get the biggest kick out of it. I did the talk, and I don't know how much time I was given, but I gave the talk, went over well, got all my points out, got my polite standing ovation, walked off the stage, and this guy who I had not seen came running out from the back with a headset on. He said, Mr. Gay, Mr. Gay. I said, yeah. And he said, fantastic. And I said, well, thank you. I thought he was talking about the talk itself. Fantastic. And I said, well, that's very kind of you. He said, I've been doing this work 40 years, and you're the first person ever who ended on the second. And he pointed over to the side, big monitor with the green digital letters, and it was reading 000. And he said, that's incredible. I don't know how long you've practiced to do that. That is just absolutely wonderful. And this guy on the phone said, and I saw the look on your face, and I knew the truth. You didn't know there was a clock. And I said, well, I'll have to admit, when he pointed at the clock, that was the first time I'd seen it. And I didn't know I had a time thing. I know they know roughly what I do, and what do you want, an hour, half a day, whatever. And I think somebody had said an hour, so I got up and talked. I did my hour stuff, like a comedian has a 5-minute set and a 15-minute set and so on. I did my hour set and walked off. But he was laughing. He'd never talked to me about it before. He said, I knew in my heart that you had never seen that clock, and you too were amazed that you were the first one in 40 years who had ended on the moment. And I said, you got me. I have to admit, I didn't have a clue. It reminded me sort of that repeating thing. I saw a comedian somewhere one day on a talk show, and he was talking about how hard you work to get your 12 minutes, or in the old Carson days, whatever it was, to get your 8-minute set or your 12-minute set down where you could start on time, finish on time, and get out good material. So those comedians, they said, do you have any nightmares?
Yeah, TED Talks are the same way. You have to be on point, and they scoot you out. I don't think they have a shepherd's hook, but they don't like it when you go over.
Of course not. They got other stuff going on. You're
Right.
not the center of the universe. That took me a while to figure out. I thought, I'm doing well. I'll just keep going. Well, Zig and all the other people in the back weren't quite as excited about my enthusiasm. They were supposed to be on at 1:30 or whatever.
Right.
But anyway, this comedian said, the worst time in my life was I worked to get we'll say 15 minutes, to get my 15 minutes down. I got hired to go onto a cruise ship. I got up the first night in the club room or whatever it's called, and I did my 15 minutes, and it went over well. The next night I came back for my set, and I'm backstage, and I'm peeking through the curtains. He said, it's the exact same crowd. Everyone is sitting precisely where they sat the night before. It was like a snapshot of 24 hours before. He said, that's when I understood if you're going to work a cruise ship for a week, you don't need one 15-minute set. You need 5, 6, 7, whatever, 15-minute sets. He said, I looked through that curtain, and he said, my legs froze. And I thought, okay, my career is going to die on its second day or its second night. So he said, I just went out and said, ladies, and told them the story, which they got the biggest kick out of. And he said, but I got a lot of leftover material that didn't go into the 15 minutes. Let's try that. That's what he did for the next 5 or 6 days. But time speech, first time in 40 years, and I hit it to the second.
That's
much to my
amazing.
surprise.
And this story
Yeah,
about the cruise guy reminds me of a story you've shared with me before about Hal Holbrook. When I think it was Mark
yep,
Twain that he did, and he could do
yep.
all of it, but he always had to feel the crowd out. What landed,
Always
what
told his
didn't, and
test
he,
story.
right. And he had to be able to shift on a moment.
Yeah, he had, I think it was 9 hours or 9.5 hours of Mark Twain material verbatim, word for word. And he would go out and did it for, I don't know, 20 years or something. He died not too long ago. But he would go out and he would always start with the same story because that gave him the feel of the audience and determined what the second story was going to be out of his 9 hours of material. And your reaction to that determined the next story. And he claimed that he never, in all those years, gave the same performance twice. He had 9 hours of material, and your reaction to story number one determined story two and on down the line. And then at the end of the, whatever it was, hour, I'm coming up. I got 3 minutes left, so I dip into my 9 hour inventory and I find a 3 minute story. It was really, people say they don't like scripts. Well, all good salespeople understand the value of a tested, proven, well-rehearsed script. And those who say they don't like them are saying it because they don't want to learn a script, too much trouble. And B, they don't remember that all the movies they ever went to, all the television programs they ever watched, everybody that they really admired in show business or the fringes of show business were operating on scripts. Probably the best at that of all the ones I personally worked with was Zig Ziglar. Zig would mix it up if he talked to this, like the guy on the ship. If Zig had talked to this group on Monday and they're still meeting and he's back to wrap up the meeting on Wednesday, he would give a different talk, but it was a talk I'd heard before. All of his talks were memorized. Cavett Robert, the co-founder of the National Speakers Association with me and Wade Cannon, we used to kid him. He had on his list he would send you when you hired him, here's the 22 talks you can pick from. There were 22 titles there. But Cavett always gave the same talk. I saw him talk 100 times. He worked for me 50 times. And he always gave the same talk, and he would get kidded. But he was so good, people were yelling out, don't forget to tell the so-and-so story. It was like they were going to an old rock and roll band, and they wanted to make sure their favorites were played. So I asked him one time, and others had asked him, why do you have 22 titles and one talk? He said, it's easier to get a new audience than it is a new talk.
That's
When
so
you
true.
finally get a talk, yeah, he said, when you finally get a talk right, don't lose it. You can use half of it for a shorter talk, 3/4 of it, 5 minutes of it. But once you got the talk down, do the talk. And that's probably one of the hardest things in sales training I've ever had to teach and get over with was people. I like to wing it. If John Wayne wung it, if that's the right word, in movies, the movies would have never been made. There's a little thing here or there that they decide to leave in that maybe was a blooper or somebody got creative. But by and large, you're paid to deliver the script we gave you. Memorize it, practice it, so that it doesn't sound scripted. Don't get. Who was it? Cary Grant said the secret of acting was not to get caught at it, and that's the secret of speaking and selling and so on. But what comes out of your mouth should be something that you've practiced and and you're familiar that it works. One more thing someone asked about, and then we'll get on to, but I always buy from Joe. And that was, they said, tell them your bartender story in St. Petersburg. Well, I was stationed in the Coast Guard in St. Petersburg where the hurricane just went through the Tampa-St. Pete area. And another disaster that I missed by 50 some odd years. So I don't have a close affiliation with it, but I was in the Coast Guard, and we were in for 10 days and out for 10 days. And the in for 10 was pretty loosey-goosey. You worked on the cutter during the day, but when 5 o'clock came or whatever, you were free to go into town and so on. I was bored out of my mind. Had already owned my own business, 2 businesses at that point, and I was used to the rapid fire of this and that, and I wasn't used to St. Petersburg and its pace, which is very slow, at least it was. When I was there, the average age, keep in mind this is years ago, in St. Petersburg was 65. They used to call it God's waiting room. It's where people went to die. And
I've heard that.
Son, yeah, I don't know if that's still its reputation, but I don't remember. I was in my mid-20s at the latest, I guess, and I never met a person my age or younger than my age or saw one unless they were on the ship with me. So I go into town. This is one of those life lessons. I go into town, and I'm thinking I'm not going to survive this. Every 10 days I got to do this, and I was young, go out and pick up women and drink and so on. But in St. Petersburg, picking up women my age was not an option, and sitting there drinking by myself was not my goal in life either. So I go to a bar called the Crystal Bar, and I don't know the main drag in St. Petersburg. If anybody's listening who's from there, maybe the bar is still there, and maybe you know what I'm talking about. It was the side of the main park where all the older people went and sat and fed the squirrels. So I walk in there, and I'm watching this gentleman named Johnny who owned it. He was from, first thing I noticed, he was from New England, as am I, but I wasn't there long enough to be affected by it. But my mother was a true Bostonian, talked like Katharine Hepburn, and my grandmother was even more pronounced, Pocket Ka and the Hobbit, and so on. So I heard his accent. I said, "Where are you from?" And he said, "I'm from a little town you've never heard of, North Andover, Massachusetts." I said, "Well, that's sort of a small world." The reason I asked where you were from is I recognized the accent because my grandmother was from North Andover, Massachusetts, 54 Elm Street. No, he said, "My God, I know the street." Well, the reason I was really talking to him was he was crippled up. He was sitting on the end of the bar on a stool. When somebody ordered something, he would get up, and it was obviously in pain, and go down and take care of him. So after we chatted for a while, I said, let me ask you something. What if you had some help in here to run this? I told him my schedule. I said, every 10 days I'm in town for 10 days. Maybe I could help you. He said, "I really can't afford anybody." I said, No, I didn't ask for a job. I asked for something to do so I don't go crazy. It was just beer and wine, so I didn't have to learn how to really be a bartender. I said, "Let me just save you the trips up and down the bar. You can sit here. You can have my tips. I don't care. I just don't want to go nuts." He says, "Really?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Under those conditions, you're hired immediately." So I got up, walked around the bar.
Of course you were.
And now I'm a bartender. So early in my stay as a bartender, picture a long bar, and on one end is the door, the front, out to the street, and the other end is bathrooms and so on. One day, 2 people came in. They weren't together when they got there, but it was an older gentleman and an older lady, and they sit down, and I guess the guy ordered first. He said, "A beer, please." I got him a beer, and then I came back and I said, "And for you, ma'am." And she said, a beer or whatever she wanted, and I got her that. And I put it down, and then I wanted to make sure they had napkins and all, so I turned back to get the napkins. When I turned back around, only she was sitting there. He was gone. A, he was old. B, he did not have time to get to the door, the bathroom, or anywhere. It wasn't like he was on the way to the pool table or something. So I walked down the end of the bar and I looked over and he's on the floor. So we called 911 or whatever you called in those days. The lady's still sitting there, 2 fresh beers in front of her. He's on the floor. And
Did this to you?
people,
I would have noticed. I would have noticed if somebody fell at my feet.
Well, she should have noticed, but
That's
I
what
had
I'm
a
saying.
bar
She should
between
have
me and
said
him.
something. Why didn't
Yeah.
she say, "Hey, by the way, Billy Bob just fell down"?
Maybe he hadn't been down that long. I don't know. But anyway, we called the thing. They showed up, the ambulance people, worked on him for a little while, and then looked up to me and said, "Sir, he's dead." So as I was turning to Johnny to inform him I wasn't in charge of dead people, I was just pouring drinks for free, I turned to Johnny to tell him, out of the corner of my eye, life lesson, the lady reaches over and slides that guy's beer in front of her. He'd only met him moments before.
Oh, it was
Didn't know his
love.
name.
Obviously, it was love. She was going to take care of that beer for the last thing she could do for him.
Right. It was her final act of goodness. But I remember thinking, as a young man, not looking for a profound business lesson, I said, "Oh, I see how that goes." You know, this could have been the thing. He'd have been hitting on her because they hit on each other in bars just like teenagers. "Hi, do you come here often?" and so on, or "Don't I know you from the home?" and type thing. But when it came down, "Sir, he's dead." And her head didn't move, her eyes didn't move, nothing but her hand. Her hand went over to her right, slid his beer in front of her, and she never looked backwards again. She enjoyed her 2 beers and left. And I thought, there's a lesson, I guess, in how fleeting relationships can be. So, and I've got others, but we'll
I
hold
love
that
that
for today.
story. I wanted to go back to the power of scripting, though. You and I have talked a lot about this, and I just mentioned that I'm mentoring people. Because listen, my podcast is now 16 years old, almost 17. I don't know whether it's old enough to drive or if I should have a debutante ball for it. I mean, it deserves
and
something.
has just reached the top 1.5% of all
Yeah,
podcasts in the world.
in the
Unbelievable.
world. And I talk about that in my new book that will land on your desk pretty quickly. I talk about the power of consistency. But to get back to my original point, you were in the Coast Guard and I just conscripted you. Conscripted you?
Yeah.
I'm volunteering you to come into my group of mentees and talk to them about the incredible power of scripting. Because I'm
Sure.
not
Love
sure I'm
to.
not sure I can do justice by it. I do script, I use scripts, but you're the expert. So you can't tell me no. I did it on the radio. So thank you. Thank you for offering.
I had great joy. You know, one of the things in selling, one of the great secrets is duplicate yourself. Well, we were running 5 companies, each in 20 countries, let's say. It was something close to that, in several different languages. And I'm supposed to duplicate myself. Well, here's how you duplicate yourself. You write a script. It's not a suggestion. It's a condition of employment. If you vary from the script, you're gone. And so you write the script, you test it, you improve it, but we all improve it together. We don't do it individually. We don't freelance. And then at 7:59 local time, in whatever language, talking about whatever product, we all say, "Good evening. My name is fill in the blank. I'm a general distributor with fill in the blank, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to tonight's special meeting." And you go on for 37 minutes, word for word. And then run a film, and at the end of the film, it says, "Thank you for coming tonight," or something. But then it says, "Turn to the person who brought you here and ask them how you can get started in fill in the blank company." And then the lights come up, and thousands of people all over the world, different languages, different products, different companies, turn to their prospect and say, "Let me show you the 4 positions." The first position is that of an organizer, and you draw a circle, and it's $91.41. And then the second position, blah, 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 and you go through the steps and sort of show how the marketing plan works. Then you say to them which position best suits your needs, whether it's in French about a motor oil additive, or in Spanish about our vitamin line, or whatever, which position best suits your needs. And if they pick one, fine, write it up. If they don't, you go to the second close of the 6 closes that there were, word for word. And that's how you duplicate yourself, and that's how we took a struggling young company and turned it into $1 million a day cash through the front door. That's $3.5 billion in today's money. The secret was quality products, competitively priced, spent our time talking to people who sort of knew what they were coming to do, qualified people, and then word for word scripting. That was how we did it. I've been asked so many times, how did you guys do that? That was amazing, and so on. And I just gave you the answer. The cosmetics were great, and we described them to everybody word for word the same way all the time. Once you get that right, you're in a groove. Now it's just like turning on a car engine. Key in, turn it, boom, it starts, and you're off and running. And after the 30-some-odd minute speech or presentation and the 15 or 20-minute film, you're at 8:59, and it's time to, you see people getting out their pens and writing things up. So that's how we did it, and the scripting is crucial, and I'd be happy to appear as the evangelist of scripting. I'd be happy to appear anywhere you want me to talk about it.
Definitely hired. And I have to tell you, you know me because you've known me forever, but I always do a pre-interview with my podcast guests. I insist on it. And you would be shocked by the number of well-known individuals who will not come on and spend 15 minutes with me. And I said, well, listen, thank you. NIL me them to death. So, well, listen, thank you. You have a nice day now here. And I just cut them off the list. I don't bother them. They're too busy. Whatever their reasons are, I'm sure it's valid, but it's my show. I'm going to do it my way. And it's important that I have that time with you before we actually schedule something. But I script it because on Tuesdays from 9 o'clock in the morning to 11:30 in the morning, I have back-to-back pre-interviews. And if I don't have that script in front of me, oh, geez. And I need to make the points so then I can delve into who they are, what they bring to the table, what they want to chat about. But I need to get that information to them quickly and concisely so they can be making a decision. Do I want to talk with this woman on a podcast? Do I want to come on this show? I script the heck out of it, and it doesn't vary. It never varies.
Absolutely. And that's once they're bright enough to understand the concept, that's great for them. My worst podcast appearances, and I'm a lot tougher about who I'm with nowadays. You, of course, are number one by far. But when I'm on with somebody else, my worst nightmares were when I let people get away with not knowing who I was or what we were going to talk about or what their plan was or who's your audience. What are you trying to achieve? And we're not trying to pre-plan the whole interview and make it sound like a robotic thing. I just want to know what's the game.
Right. Exactly. Who are you and why do I want to spend an hour with you?
Right.
Why do you want to spend an hour with me and my audience? It's important, but I have to get that hard information in first. This is how we do it. This is what happens. This is what you can expect from me. And then I will say, now, do you want me to invite you to the podcast? And they're like, oh, yeah. But I always ask them, do you want me to invite you? Because it's not a given.
Mm-hmm. On either part.
Right.
On either person's part. And that's fine. This is, and until we say go, this is an open deal. I may not want to talk to you. You may not want to talk to me. No hard feelings. But let's not.
But when it does, I can say no. I have been known to say, I'm not a good fit for you. Sorry.
Yeah. and that's, you're doing them a favor rather than having them appear foolish or unprepared, because the audience just remembers they didn't like the interview. They don't necessarily know whose fault it was. So while you were talking, you reminded me of Dr. Napoleon Hill when he was my personal mentor and coach, or whatever. I don't know what we called it at the time. Now it's become mentor. At the beginning of every problem, where it was a group meeting, 10 or 12 people sitting around my desk, or just the two of us, early on, you would hear him say, okay, tell me where we are now exactly. Then he would say, and tell me what we're trying to achieve exactly. And what problems do you see between where we are and where we want to go? Exactly. He always made sure the table was set, that we were playing the same. It wouldn't be fair to throw a Monopoly game in the middle of a table with people who've never heard of Monopoly and then start rolling the dice. You go to jail, I win, give me $200. He wanted to know what we were up to. And, at the conclusion of this meeting, where are we supposed to be, or what's the plan supposed to be? And that's what you're saying to a podcast guest. Here's what I do. Tell me what you do, how we can blend that together. And you're doing a great favor for them. I've gotten much better at saying, we're not ready for each other. One of the ways I phrase it. On your end, it's you and your wife listening. You don't have an audience. You don't know why you ought to have an audience. And you're hoping I'll just come in and fill an hour for you. Well, I got other things to do. So I'm not willing to do that. And
I don't blame you. And while we're talking about scripting, Ben, recently I've had to script, I think 3 or 4 new ones that just never came up. But the show has gotten so big and so many people want to come on it. God bless them, and I thank them for that. But I'm getting inquiries from people who have never been, and this has happened a couple of times in the last month, never been on a podcast. They can't really point me to anything that they're doing online that would be of interest to my audience. But I can't just say, you got to be kidding me. No, of course you can't come on. So I've had to write scripts, and I'm happy to do it. I'm glad that people are interested in becoming a guest or learning more about it. They're not just sitting on their hands and going, well, I wish I could do it. She does. You can learn. But the thing is, I've had to write these scripts that say, thank you. I'm not a good fit for you right now, but let me make some suggestions about what you can do. And I've written about 4 or 5 different things where they can go, to become a guest or a podcaster. One of them is, you've mentioned it before, Toastmasters. Another one is hang out where your podcast hosts that you really like are hanging out and watch what they do. Get out on social media. So, I have this script that I can just put the name in, and it's from the heart, but I can't rewrite it every single time. I'd go nuts.
Here's one you can add to your scripted things. I use it as my polite getaway. Not now, but please keep me in your loop! !
And
that's positive.
That's in every one that I write. Listen, please stay in touch. Don't ignore me. I'm not ignoring. It's not that bold, but please do stay in touch. And if I can be of any assistance to you at all, let me know.
Exactly.
Keep up the good work. Keep going. Do it. You can do this.
And we'll know when you're ready. You don't have to say it, but it's not now.
I know. Yeah. Listen, we forgot to talk about Joe. We always do this. We always have a good time. But here's the thing. While we're having a good time, y'all, we're also covering a lot of information that maybe wasn't going to be part of our show, but it worked its way in, and it's all important. And we can always do another episode of this, or 2 or 3, which we've done with some of them. But let's talk briefly about Joe. And I have to tell you, every time I see, but I always buy from Joe, I go back to COVID, when Uncle Joe tried to stop me from going into the grocery store without a mask. We had a chat. And I'm not sure he cried, but after that, when he would see me, he would all of a sudden just, oh, and off he'd go. He'd just toddle off. And I called him Uncle Joe to his face, because Uncle Joe is the guy you don't want at the coffee klatch or the family reunion. Nobody likes Joe. So anyway, that's my Joe story.
The lessons are well learned, and I go back to what I'm always talking about. Take notes. Learn as you go along, and you discovered something, learned something you didn't know. Write down what it is. I've had to write down numerous things about what wipes out a podcast or a physical appearance. My fee is enough where I used to be terribly grateful to get it, still terribly grateful, but I don't need it like I used to. So in the middle of a conversation of, hi, we want you to come in and talk to our group. I said, well, I'll be happy to discuss that. Who's your group? Exactly what are you trying to achieve? Because there are people, I don't want to embarrass myself or waste their time. There are people who were just not a good match. Podcast, live presentation,
That's right.
Zoom call, whatever, we're just not a good match. One of us, I probably at my age and all, if I'm not a good match now, I'm never going to be a good match because I don't want to do it. And for them on their side, some of them, they're going to be great. They're just not ready yet. So we always buy from Joe, page 173, is one of my favorite subject matters because it's one of the toughest. We don't need it. I want to think about it and all the other things we've covered in our previous calls and we'll cover in our future calls, and that sales infiltration, the greatest thing ever written about selling, overcomes, the last chapter in the closers part 2. But this is actually one of the toughest, but we always buy from Joe because now you're up against people don't like, if you're taking notes, people don't like change. Good or bad, to their advantage, disadvantage, or whatever, they don't like change. Of course, then there's the fear of rejection and all sorts of other fears and so on. But among them all is they don't like change, and it's where inertia comes in. It's one of the few things I remembered in school because I found it fascinating. In high school, a body in motion tends to remain in motion until acted upon by an outside force. A body at rest tends to remain at rest until acted upon by an outside force. So you have to that's inertia. You have to overcome the inertia, among other problems with that response. We always buy from Joe. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. That's an old Southern term. Bert Lentz, a financial guy in the Carter administration, coined. Now, I don't know if he coined it, but he made it famous. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. People, things are going along fine. I got to work today. I wasn't killed. Everybody's supposed to be here is here. So let's just pretty much keep doing that. Let's not rock the boat unless we absolutely have to. They'll take on a brand new idea they hadn't thought of, never heard of, etc., much quicker than they will take on shifting from this supplier to that supplier, or this product to that product, and so on. That's change, and that's overcoming inertia. So there are some ways to attack that, although I repeat, it's probably among the hardest of all closes. The example I usually give, I have a financial advisor friend first now, but in the beginning he was an insurance guy when I first met him 40 plus years ago. And he was my insurance guy. And then he became, like many insurance people do, took all the classes, became a financial expert. He became my financial guy. And gradually he became vice president, and that's an honorary term. I have a vice president in charge of the lawn. I don't want to hear what he had to do to mow it. Just mow it. Take care. Drive by if it needs it. Do it. He's the vice president of the lawn. Well, Michael Hunt, my financial guy, is vice president of my money. has been for over 40, maybe it's 50 years now. We were both young when we met. And he has infiltrated, sales infiltration, every aspect of my life. He knows my kids. I know his. He takes an interest in them. I take an interest in his, although all of our kids are now grown, mid-30s at the youngest. And so on. So when somebody says to me, I got a great financial deal and so on, I said, well, I'll give you an email and you can send it to P. Michael Hunt, but I want you to know about it. I said, I don't want to know about it except in the broadest of terms until Michael knows about it. Because without him, we don't do anything. I'm not as good I'm probably not good at all, but I'm certainly not as good as Michael is at things like that. So he must approve it. And we have the type of relationship. He's gotten me out of some difficult personal and financial situations. I've been of tremendous help to him in some situations over the years. We're like brothers. We hardly ever see each other physically, but we're like brothers. If he called right now, Denise, you don't break in, but we have a code. If he broke in right now with the magic word, I'd put you on hold and take the call. Just long enough to tell him I'm doing a podcast and so on, but no call from P. Michael goes unanswered. That type of relationship. So when you come in to give me your latest financial advice with your product or service, there's no way to get past P. Michael. I kid him. He swapped over from Mike to Michael for various reasons years ago. But his first initial is P. So when I'm talking to him, he's P. Michael. He's not Mike. He's not Michael. He's P. Michael. But there is nothing you could say or do to me to get me to swap something I'm doing with Michael to you, the listener, whoever you are. Nothing you can say. So I was telling him that one day because I used it as an example. And he said, Ben, is there nothing? And I said, no. He said, well, what about this? What about this? What about that? And everywhere he went, I said, nothing. He said, all right, I can't come up with the right answer, but let's assume there was something that you were terribly interested in and wanted to do that I don't offer. What about then? And he said, and I want an answer, not just we won't do it. And I finally, after several minutes of contemplation talking to him, I said, all right, here's how someone could get around that, even if whether they know it or not. The get around is you run it by Michael. He must approve the concept, even though he has nothing to do with it. He must approve the concept. If he approves the concept and tells me to go forward, I'll do it, Michael, without you. But I will then send you a check for 1/2 of whatever we made on the deal, or for 1/2 of the savings if he's saving me so much money. He said, so I'm still in? I said, let me repeat. I'll talk slower, Michael. There is nothing to do with money I will do that you're not in on.
Right.
If only to keep your interest up. If you're not going to make anything out of it, there's nothing to gain or lose or anything, I might get your sort of secondhand opinion. I want your full opinion. So if I'm going to make or save $1 million on a deal that you have nothing to do with, but you study and approve, then you get $500,000. He says, all right, I like that. And he said, now I won't be offended if you ever go anywhere else. Well, I never have.
Right.
He became my...
He's your Joe. He is your Joe.
That's right.
But so if we're talking, not everybody is fortunate enough or blessed enough to have that kind of relationship. But let's assume we walked into someplace and their Joe happens to be their brother-in-law and he's sitting in the next room. What do you do then?
Well, there are numerous. Let me tell you a cute one before I get into that, because I'll get off subject and forget about it. Ray Considine, who you've heard me refer to. In fact, you have his book, Wamish.
Wamish, yep, got that book.
Yeah. Why are you making it so hard for me to give you my money? He was the most interesting, charismatic character I've ever known up close and personal. Movies, he didn't go into the movies, but he was a male model. Dashing, handsome guy with the Hollywood glasses, knew everybody, and everybody considered it an honor to know him. But he was a salesman. That's, what he, and a speaker and whatever. But he started off. We always buy from Joe in reverse. He's up against some guy. They were selling a similar product or service. And Ray called and made sure he had the first appointment with the guy. And then he was followed by the second guy, the other guy. So Ray goes in, gives his presentation. The guy said he wanted to think about it because they always bought from Joe. And Ray said, not a problem. If Joe shows up and does what he's supposed to do, I expect you to weigh both propositions carefully. Repeat, here's what we do best, blah, 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 blah. And then as he was leaving, he picked up a blank order form from the secretary's desk or somewhere.
I remember this story.
Yeah.
Ray was kind of a dog, wasn't he? He really was.
Folded it with the outside showing, where it said order form, put it in his coat pocket, and then, because his meeting ended about 5 or 10 minutes ahead of time, lingered in the lobby till he saw his competition coming up the sidewalk, up the office steps. And then Ray stepped out, as only Ray could do, 6'4", handsome, dazzling looking, pulled out the order form from inside, and he says something to the effect of, the early bird catches the worm. Next time, maybe it'll be your turn. But I really appreciate it, and I hope you don't hold it against me. And I went down the steps. Day later, he either called the prospect or the prospect called him. I don't know, but he said, Ray, is that deal still good? And he said, oh yeah. He said, but you said you wanted to consider Joe. And he said, Joe never showed up. So Joe saw what he thought was a signed order and raised hand, turned around, went home, or back to his office.
That was Joe's mistake.
So we always buy from Joe if Joe's smart enough to take advantage of that.
That's where I was going with it. Yeah. Is Joe smart enough to step up and say, hey, let's see what we can do. Let's fix this. Or
I saw Constantine just leave here and he had an order in his pocket. I thought you were going to consider both of us, blah, 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 blah. And at which point the guy would have said, I didn't give him an order. But he never got that far. He never knew.
So he was defeated before he made it all the way into the room.
Right. Never went in.
Too bad.
So you've got the loyalty aspect. Usually it's just inertia. They don't like change. They haven't thought about it. They don't want to think about it. So how do you overcome it? One, and I've just made a few little notes here, a test order. Go for a test order. I'm not asking you to swap your loyalties after 20 years, but we do this so well, I really think you're going to find it to your advantage to use us. So let's do a test side-by-side order. Whatever you're going to do it. In addition to that, but cut it back. In addition to that, use our product, service, fill in the blank. And then let's take a look at the results. Another version of that is give us a try and see what your folks say. I know in various businesses I've run over the years, if it's something I'm not dealing with day in and day out, I go to the people in the company who are dealing with it and say, what do you think? I think you and I have talked about this. The people who design check stands, grocery stores, have never worked in a check stand in a grocery store, or else they wouldn't do that to the backs and knees and so on of people. So you go to the people who are really dealing with it and find out what they think. Well, a test order, side-by-side test order, will show that. If the folks come back and say, golly, this works better,
Right.
And it's saving us money.
And you're
Let's go
offering them
with
a
it.
comparison. They can compare it without going, oh, geez, I have to swap and then I have to go back to Joe because I didn't like these guys. And I mean, I can hear the verbal gymnastics in my head. But if you offer to
Right.
do a comparison with them, that's brilliant.
And I would, again, it depends on the product or service. I would, at some point, if there's big volume, but the individual risk isn't bad, I would, as a last thing, as I was heading out the door, I would throw in a free test period. Here's the deal. We'll bring in the widget, install it for you, etc., and let you use it for a week or 2 weeks or what have you. And if your product or service, if it's really good, that could be a fantastic way in the door, because after the people on your floor, your customers or whoever's going to use the widget, have used it for a brief period of time and seen the advantage of it, and then you come in and say, okay, well, that was fun, but we're going to take that back and go back to the old way. They'll do your selling for you. What are you talking about? No, this is so much better. And with those people, by the way, somewhat off subject, with those people, catch them while they're young and fresh. Because when they come into your business is going on, they will sort of get in line and do what they were told to do, while wondering, why in the world do they do it this way? Why there's a better way? But if you wait 30 days, they've become part of the problem. They're not part of the solution anymore, or potential parts of the solution anymore. So you want to get them before they're soured. Or in the horse business, we used to call it barn sour. You rent to support the thoroughbreds and the fancy horses. We always had pleasure horses that you could rent by the hour, and because that paid the bills while my uncle and father were enjoying their life with the fancy people, with the horse folks. And once a horse became barn sour, that meant, ride it as long as you want. Well, the horse doesn't know that. He knows that if you walk out to point B, turn around, come back, that's an hour, everybody's happy. So you put a kid on a horse and he goes off and he thinks he's riding, and he doesn't know why the horse turned around, and he doesn't know why he can't get the horse to go the direction they were going. And he doesn't know in a few minutes why the horse is standing in his stall eating grain out of the thing. Because the horse does a 1 hour turnaround and doesn't want to hear about new things. You want to get your new
I feel for that horse.
People.
I really do. I don't want to hear anymore. You go now.
But anyway, barn sour is a problem with employees too. They get barn sour, and well, I guess that's the way we're going to do it. And then instead of being full of fresh ideas, they're saying to the new guy, well, that's the way we've always done it. So you want to catch them before that settles in. And if it's a new product, instead of just a new person, you want to break them in to the benefits of the product. If I gave somebody a free test, I'd drop by a few times and make sure they were using it right, and pump the brakes a little bit and let them get a good feel for it, so that when the test is up and you come to remove it, they're saying, no, why would we go back to the old way? This is better. Now, that won't work if your product or service doesn't lift. That's one of the problems with this concept. That won't work if your product or service is not as good, or doesn't offer such tremendous financial advantages that it overcomes any shortcomings that it has. It only works if you've got a great product. As I've told you many times, our chemists, for instance, in the cosmetic business, their job was to talk to our secretaries. In those days, those were females. They were we didn't know the term, but they were our focus group. The ultimate focus group was Martha Conley. Marty was her nickname. Marty Conley, my secretary. If you showed her product and she liked it, it was in. She might run it by my wife or her best friend or something, but basically all you had to do was sell Marty Conley. But then you had to promise me that when I stood on stage and held up the jar of whatever it was, wrinkle remover, skin moisturizer, eyeliner, whatever I held it up, I could say honestly, you cannot get a better product. You might get one where you like the scent or the this or the that better. Fine. We can't catch all of those. But as far as quality, this is good as a product can get because we use the highest grade pharmaceutical ingredients, not cosmetic ingredients. So come up and smell it or rub a little on your hand, and if you like it, we're good to go because it can't be any better than that. You got a jar of something in your hand that sells for $100 and mine is $5. Mine is better because it's pharmaceutical grade, and that was the condition under which we had it made. When you're in that type of position, the testing, the side-by-side comparison, et cetera, works marvelously and always will. So, and then make sure that they understand what's in it for me. That's the base question in all of selling. Whether they say it, whether they've heard the term or not, or heard the question, understand when you're talking to a prospect, what's in it for me is all they really want to know. And if that's a satisfactory answer, they'll go with you. There might be that awkward moment. And here's some good, we have to tell the other guy, here's some good news. In this computerized age, many of these breakups are not face-to-face over a desk. You just don't order their stuff anymore. You don't hit enter. You go to the new product or service and start doing that. And then say if to the prospect, if you run into a little pushback from your previous supplier, send them to me because I've got some ideas that would really help them. But I'll handle any awkward positions if you want. But the real trick is what's in it for you is better than what you're using now. I'm willing to do a test order or a free trial or whatever to prove that to you. And once I've proven it to you, I know you're smart enough to act in your own best interests. In fact, in the chapter on this that we're referring to, there's a reminder, you owe it to your owners, your shareholders, the other people in your company who are affected by your decisions. You owe it to them to do what's right for them, not what you've always done. And you don't have to slash your wrists and say you've been wrong for years. Just swap. Just make the change. And in 30 days, no one will remember the way it used to be done. I know you encounter that in your computer stuff. Gigi does most of our computer stuff. But when eBay or somebody changes a program, oh my God, why did they change it? Why did they do this and that? And she's right about that. These companies are filled with little idiots with their propeller hats on who come in every morning and their job is to change something to justify their existence, even if it didn't need changing. But after 30 days or
They
2
break
weeks or
it.
whatever.
Right.
Yeah,
But after we've gotten past being ticked off, after we've learned it all over again, then the little jerks break it again. So yeah, I get it.
Well, they used to talk about government
Leave it
workers.
alone.
Every morning, a government worker comes in and finds a new molehill on his desk. And his or her job by nightfall is to turn it into a mountain. And that's what goes on in the computer companies, computer programming companies. Everything's going along fine. Well, I know, but if I don't make any change, you don't need me. So let me go back to this program that's been working for 20 years or whatever and change it just so I can say I did something.
Yeah, well, these days we're all vocal. We jump on Yelp, we jump on Test Pilot, we jump on Facebook, and we yak about it.
Yep. Absolutely.
Okay, keep going. I'm sorry.
That goes back to that old thing of one happy customer will sell. I'm making up numbers, but there used to be allegedly a study that said a happy customer will tell, it was 5 or 7 people how happy he is with your product service. An unhappy customer will tell 17 people immediately and then never stop talking about it. So, yeah. But after they get used to the new program, everybody settles in. So there will be a little bump in the road, perhaps. But the
There will
testing,
be. Listen, I was
yeah,
with Cox forever, Cox Communications, because I had to be. We had nothing else, and I hated them. In fact, I'm convinced that they had an entire office full of people that when they heard it was me, they would just go, "Oh God." And I never got nasty, but I made my point. And then when AT&T Uverse came along, I went, bye, and off I left. I didn't care if it was better, worse. I didn't care. I hated them that bad. This was years ago. I'm still hating them. So
well, see,
beware.
that's my point. You
Yeah.
told 17 people immediately, and you're telling me years later. It never, the
I
upset never
remember
goes
telling
away.
Larry Wingate about it. Larry hasn't been on my show for a while and he's retired now. But I remember waxing eloquent about Cox Communications on one of our shows. He said, Denise, you know how he talks, Denise, tell me what you really think. And I just lost it. I thought I was. So, but yeah, it's bad. Listen, we are out of time. I can't believe before I let you go, after I have now, talked you into coming on my mentors and talking with them, what are we talking about next week? Oh, and by the way, that's going to be November 6th. We'll be on the 13th and on the 20th, but that being Thanksgiving month, we will not be podcasting on the 27th, the day before Thanksgiving. So stick with us. We're going to be here all but one day in November.
And next week, we're going to talk about whatever you do, don't sell out. Starts on page 81.
Okay, don't sell out. Okay, good. All right. Well, listen, before I let you go, is there anything you want the audience to know?
Nope. I'm in good shape. You got the order website, the best web. What's best? See, what's in it for you? What's in it for you by going to the website I told you about at the beginning of the show, stores.ebay.com/Ronzoni-books. What's in it for you is better pricing, free shipping domestically, United States, and a lifetime money-back guarantee, but they're still signed and dated. So that's what's in it for you to make the change over. And then next week, if you make a note somewhere, remind me that they're not just getting a book, they're getting a sales training department. I'll show them. In fact, we do it, you and I do it frequently. Once everybody has a copy, we're all singing out of the same hymnal.
Right.
You've got a sales training department.
And we're here to answer questions. You're here to answer questions. Yeah. I can just go, hey, yep. Ben, you got a question? I can't do it. But I can help.
Yeah, you always do. So that's it. I look forward to seeing you next week, and you have a wonderful time during the week. And then remember, we're on page 81 next week. Whatever you do, don't sell out. That, by the way, is in the Closers Part 2.
I put a sticky note in there. Well, listen, everybody, and tomorrow's Halloween, by the way. Have fun out there. I don't know about y'all. I stopped giving out Halloween candy a long time ago, and right now, with groceries being what they are, I just don't see my neighbors wanting to sugar up a bunch of kids that they've never met before. So I think it's going to be a dark Halloween for us. But whatever it is, have fun with it. And before we conclude another episode of the Closers Inner Circle podcast, I really want to express our sincere gratitude for your support. Your engagement keeps this podcast thriving. It keeps us on our toes. And we hope that you found today's discussion both insightful and inspiring. And we look forward to seeing you next Wednesday. Ben, thank you.
Thank you, dear. See you Wednesday.
Absolutely.